Welcome back for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. I am your host, Tim Sheils, and I am joined by my buddy and co host, Wayne Breezie Brown. We're going to be touching everything involving the Celtics over the past few days, including that massive win in game four, as well as an ongoing storyline going into game five involving Dejounte Murray. Before we get into things, Wayne, how we doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Everybody should be doing great, especially if you're rocking that green. You should be doing great. One more to go, baby. One more to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it was one of those games I feel like after that, it felt like very much like a palate cleanser. Rob Williams talked about it, and Rob Williams had a fantastic game, and I mean, massive on the boards. We'll get into that in a second, but talked about how it felt like very much like in their eyes that it was a must-win game. And I think honestly, if you're looking from a Celtics perspective, it kind of was because if Atlanta wins that game, all of a sudden it becomes a series. Now, if that happens, then all of a sudden it's a best of three. It's a whole brand new series. Celtics have two of those three games at home at TD Garden, but you don't want to put yourself in that situation. Now you've got Philadelphia, who finished off a legitimate gentleman sweep of the Nets, and so now they're just waiting. Joel Embiid, apparently his knee is at like 50% right now. He's like a coin flip to actually start the semifinals. So, and that would kick off if the Celtics close out on Tuesday, that series would start Saturday. So, you have to try and put the Hawks away as fast as possible because if you don't, that means there's more time for Joel Embiid to get healthy and to rest. And that's the last thing you want to do. I mean, obviously, you know people are dealing with injuries and stuff, but you got to take advantage of it if you're the Celtics.
Yeah, look, this should have been over. That should have been game four. But if, was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. Unfortunately, we lost one in Atlanta, but they will close it out and at home. All right. And so that'll be a way to, get a couple of days off and then get ready for Philly. I'm gonna say this. I don't care if Embiid is fully healthy. I much more like that matchup better than I like what's going on right now in Atlanta because I feel like Philly isn't the scrappy team. They're a team with a good head coach, and it really runs through Embiid. And if you let Embiid do what he does, the question is, who's the next person that's going to step up? Is it going to be James Harden? Is it going to be Tobias Harris? You don't
Tyrese
know.
Maxey.
Maxi is the so if you kind of eliminate you let Harden do what he does, and I know I'm talking into existence. I'm sorry, Tim, but I just feel like that's going to be the next matchup.
You got to acknowledge it.
I gotta acknowledge it, but we've played Philly really well this season, and so Embiid is just going to be Embiid if he's healthy. But you got to look at it like this: whatever Embiid we get, he's not going to be the same Embiid we played against in the regular season. He's not going to be nowhere near to being 100%. So this is a one up for the Celtics, and it looks like the Celtics, in my opinion, are getting stronger and stronger and stronger as they go along. Speaking of that, I have to talk about the maskless Brown because he took off the mask. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what happened. All I know is in quarter two, the mask came off and he started going ham and cheese.
I've never heard anyone call it ham and cheese, but yeah, I agree, man. He started 1 of 7. He takes the mask off. The rest of the way, he goes 11 of 15. So I'm not even gonna argue it, man. Hey, look, I love the mask. I loved how crazy good he got towards the tail end of the season. I thought that was actually going to negatively impact his numbers. He didn't miss that many games with the mask, and he just literally turned into a superhero. Like he put it on and yeah, actually, Grant, no, you're not Batman. Jalen is because he's out here being the Dark Knight, screwing everybody over. So, like, he was whooping ass for that stretch run and closed out so strong.
They
I think
needed
that's going
that.
to really help his All NBA conversation, to be quite honest. But he just took it off in the game, and I was really surprised that he did it mid game. But it worked, and I highly doubt he's going to put it back on unless he's worried about taking a knock in the face. And I think that's part of the reason why he's kept it on so long. He joked and said, like, my mom thinks I should keep it on. So who
Right.
knows? Maybe it makes a return in maybe he keeps it on for the final game of this series. But you hope that eventually he's not going to have to deal with it. But I think between that and the cut on his finger, and I think he reopened it again or got another cut. I don't know. He got his he had blood running down his arm at one point during the
Yeah.
game. I don't know. He just keeps like getting these like random cuts and bruises. So you have to worry about it a little bit. But I think dealing with these multiple things has just been a lot. So him taking off the mask, I think, was sort of removing one of those factors, something that was blocking his vision. But I mean, he was massive in that game. It's like between him, Rob, and Derek for who made like the most impact in that, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll talk about Derek White in a second because Derek White has been a godsend for the Celtics, right? I mean, you want a guy that could get to the basket, that's going to finish. Like he rarely misses at the rim. And he takes the most awkward shots you've ever seen, right? Because he's so tiny, but his bounce is good and he gets up, the ball goes in, he has a crazy looking floater. He just knows how to finish around the rim. And so he's been playing really good. And then his defense has been like out of this world. I mean, he just never gives up on a play. I would say, in my opinion, and I know Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are the superstars, but I would say that I would argue that Rob Williams and White, they possibly are like the MVPs of this particular series.
I think that's a bold take, but I tend to agree with it mainly because I think this is the closest we've seen Robert Williams be to what he was last year before the injury. Because you're seeing him get these rebounds. We talked about it a little bit before we hopped on, but 13 rebounds in the first half, the most since Kendrick Perkins had, or it was 12 first half rebounds, the most since Kendrick Perkins, who had 13 against Detroit in guess what season? 2008. So, like, he went out there and was just doing anything and everything to help them win the game. You saw him diving for loose balls, you saw him tipping out passes, fighting for rebounds. He had a couple and one opportunities. He was actually getting more involved in the offense, which I thought was great. And there were a couple plays really towards crunch time, like the last like 3 minutes, where Jalen Brown was driving to the hoop and you had the defense collapsing. Jalen Brown finds him. He has like almost like I want to say it was two possessions straight where he goes to Rob Williams, who gets up and just, gets in a nice little close layup, like right next to the basket, and two massive buckets that you needed at that time. And for Rob, I think right now, this is sort of this next step that you want him to take. I don't think it's going to happen instantaneously, but he's been doing it more and more. And they talked about it a little bit, specifically Joe Mazzulla saying he has all of these abilities, and it's just a matter of empowering him and challenging him and you know, letting him know, like, you just have to be more consistent and just attack. Like, they're really trying to make a point of keeping him involved and instilling him with that confidence to be like, you are you are a physically gifted athlete. There's so many like you step on the court, there's not like anyone else who's able to do exactly what you can do because of your physical attributes. Like the natural athleticism that Rob has, it's just not common. It's part of the reason why he originally was projected as a lottery pick. The reason why he fell was because of the concerns. It's some kind of circulatory thing with his knees, which I think they figured out. And there was also concerns about his work ethic. And I don't think that's an issue here. I think it's more so just him applying himself. I don't think the work ethic's a problem. I mean, they keep
Rem- Remember, we used to call him Time Lord,
yeah. Well, and then I've also heard part-time lord because he
part
would be
time
hurt.
Lord. Well,
I
he
think
had
that
issues
it's
showing up on
clever.
time, and then there was that one incident. I believe he like overslept and missed a meeting or something like that
He
with the
he
Celtics.
missed his introductory
His
press
introductory
conference.
press
He missed
conference.
his flight to get there. Yeah, something like that, and so he never lived that down, but, you know, he just overall, I feel like he's just taking these steps, and for him to he was the one who said, like, "I'm close to what I was. This
Yeah,
is about as good as I've felt in a year,"
yeah.
and this is why you look at all of the rest and you talk about injuries mounting up across the league. I don't know if you saw it earlier, but now De'Aaron Fox has got a broken finger.
No
And so,
way.
yeah, broken in his, I think his left index finger. So in his left hand, broke it sometime in the fourth quarter in their loss to the Warriors. So now that series is split 2-2. And he is going to try and gut it out for game 5. Don't know how that's going to go, but
That's gonna be tough.
it's rough, right? And so the Celtics, I feel like the way that they've handled these, these rotations and trying to stagger Rob and Al and get them rest and, rest them on back to backs or, they've managed that situation perfectly because you've got both of those guys being able to contribute significant minutes and be playing at a high level. Like the one thing we talked about before going into the series was bigs, right? Bigs and then those guard matchups. The big specifically in this series, you notice like I want to say that from game 3 moving on to game 4, you saw a significant change for Atlanta in the way that they were like stacking up in the interior. Like they just started locking down in the paint more and they still did it in game 4, but they blew them out of the water in game 3 in the boards. And you
Yeah.
saw Boston come back with a more concerted effort. They barely edged them out in the rebound category for that game. The Celtics did. So that comes from effort, that comes from guys like Rob and Al and just an overall team effort, but Rob led all rebounders in this game with
Breaking
15.
news. I hate to bring it to you. Breaking news. Dejounte Murray's been suspended for 1 game.
We said this. We said this. Yes. I
Breaking
almost spoke
news.
it. Okay. I almost spoke this into existence. Before we hopped on today, before we recorded, I was like, man, I hope we get to Dejounte.
Wow.
I told you this was going to happen. Okay.
I
Okay.
I
All
wow.
right. All right.
Breaking
All right.
news. All right, so I don't mean to cut you off, but we need to
No,
preface to
no,
what
this is,
happened.
oh,
Let's go
yeah.
right into it. Let's
This is,
preface
this
what
is, this
happened.
is juicy stuff.
Dejounte Murray had a little run in with the ref, with an NBA official, right? A little shoving, so pushing, something happened. And unfortunately, and it's weird because they allowed the game to go on. He continued to play.
Well, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
It happened after the game.
Okay.
So it was after the final whistle, and it was as the teams were heading out towards the locker room. Dejounte Murray went out of his way to go over to an official
That's what
and
happened.
like he like bumped. So this is the he ref shoulders here. He bumped him and
Yep.
like was in his face,
Yep.
saying some stuff, and then started walking away towards the locker room, and then turned back and was like yelling, I think at that official and then the other official as he was getting escorted back to the locker room. So a lot of people were saying, well, Jason Tatum made contact with the ref earlier in the game.
There we go.
First off, Tatum got
Fouled.
he got fouled, right?
Flagrant foul. Don't say hard foul. It was a flagrant foul. Look
It was a
flagrant. It was
flagrant,
flagrant, and they called it a flagrant.
flagrant. So it's a flagrant foul. He gets up immediately. What the ref was doing is the ref was the one who initiated the contact because he thought he was going to go after Trey Young. He
Right. And he
thought there
pushed
was going to
his
be a fight.
right. Right. He
And
got
so
in
he
between.
pushed it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so like Tatum was like, "Nah, I'm fine." He like pushed past him to go talk to the head official to be like, "What the hell is this? Can you look at this?" Like, I they clearly weren't going for the basketball in this play, and he was right. They dished out that flagrant foul, but different situations. Dejounte Murray initiated this encounter.
That's the
He was the
key.
one who initiated. He did it with intent to intimidate and to give off kind of like a threatening vibe. And you talk about respect with officials. This is an example of this. Grant Williams got suspended for lesser charges earlier on in the season against the Bulls, right? So he
Remember,
got up after a drive
he
and he
tried to,
brushed into official.
but he tried to avoid it. If you look at it, listen, it was like it was the female official too, if I'm not mistaken. I think I
You are
remember,
correct. Yes,
and it was like
one of the female officials.
one
Yeah,
of the female officials, right? And I'm not saying he tried to avoid the contact, but it wasn't like a
it wasn't
deliberate.
like he like floored her or
That's what I'm
anything.
trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think he knew she was there, but there was nothing he could do about it because when he turned, he was going full throttle anyway, and it was just
and he,
it was a
yeah,
hit. Yeah,
yeah.
and he got suspended for it. Right,
And
rightfully
he
so.
earned it. He got ejected from that game and he got suspended. Now, this was a situation where Dejounte Murray's situation happened after the game. So there's nothing they could do in the moment. And like
Ah,
and if you want to say about like Tatum's situation, look, they reviewed it. Like they weren't looking at the contact with the official there. They
remember, I
weren't.
immediately text you and said, "Oh no." I watched Tatum because Tatum pushed his hands. He pushed the safety hands down.
Yeah.
But he did that to go talk to the official. Mind you, we can't hear what they're saying on the court. He probably said exactly what you said. Now I'm cool, and he didn't care about that official. He was trying to get to the head official
Yeah.
to have them review that. Like that. That's pretty spot on, Tim. So yeah, that's the difference. It's a big
S-
difference.
When this is the actual official NBA communications press release that we've got. Atlanta Hawks Dejounte Murray has been suspended 1 game without pay for making inappropriate contact with and verbally abusing a game official. It was announced today by Joe Dumars, executive vice president, head of basketball ops. The incident occurred at the conclusion of the Hawks' 129-121 loss to the Boston Celtics in Game 4 of their first round playoff series on April 23rd, State Farm Arena. Murray will serve a suspension on Tuesday, April 25th, when the Hawks visit the Celtics for Game 5 of the series at TD Garden. So, regardless of it being the playoffs or not, you do something like that, you are going to get suspended. You are going to earn it. And as much as it sucks, I think regardless of whether or not Dejounte Murray was going to suit up for this game, I think the Hawks are going to go down. Do I think that this hurts the Hawks? Absolutely. Because I think Dejounte Murray, out of all of the players on the Hawks, he's been one of the most consistent menaces on the floor
Agreed.
because he's not as much of a defensive liability. Like he's known for being a really strong defender as well as being like a two-way player. So the fact is he's more playable out there than Trey Young is. Trey Young is really great at getting foul calls and getting to the line, and he's done pretty good in the last 2 games specifically to do that. But he's been mostly taken out of the equation, except Dejounte Murray. He's been like really consistent for the most part. So that really hurts them. They work through their guards. They're the 2 best players that they have on the team. I mean, DeAndre Hunter was great in game 4, was massive for them. I think he might have had a good game in game 3, but game 4, he was a reason why he was like they were in the mix. He was
He
hitting a
started
lot of
off really
threes.
he started off really hot in game 3, and then I think he kinda, like, was tamed a little bit because then it started running through, Dejounte Murray. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But
Mm.
but Murray missing is huge for them because now who else are you gonna run it through? And so,
You
like,
got to go big, I think.
it's gonna be interesting to find out what they do. I think, DeAndre Hunter, I mean, he had a lot of open looks, because you're trying to double Trey, and then you're trying to get to Murray, and once they started to tame Murray, they were gonna let Hunter shoot. It's just that he wasn't missing, so he had a good game. Like you can't do nothing about it. He had a good game, and so now he's got to travel. They got to travel to Boston. It's gonna be rough. I expect what we saw the first 2 games to be like this particular matchup that's coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's going to be magnified. I think this is going to be really, really tough for Atlanta. Going into a hostile territory is already hard enough. Going to TD Garden's a whole different situation, and you're trailing 3-1, and you're missing one of your star players. That's got to be demoralizing for that locker room. I'm sure they're all pissed at DeJounte. Like, as much as they can be mad at the officials, it's like,
They
dude,
can't even be mad at the officials because the officials didn't do anything.
what do you expect them to do?
That's
Like,
what I'm saying. The
what do you
officials
expect the
didn't do
refs
anything.
to
We're
do
going
in
to be
that
mad
situation,
because
man?
they did this at the end of the game. The officials weren't expecting a player to come on over
No.
there, make some type of contact. This is on Dejounte Murray. Look,
100%. Yeah.
you have to figure out a way to tame yourself even when you're hot. It must have been a crazy foul not called or a crazy call, but it's not like this game was close. Let's not get it let's not get it twisted. I mean, it had its moments where they were close in the game, but when the Celtics decided to take over, when Jason Tatum just said "F it" and just started scoring out of nowhere, they just pushed the button. It wasn't close. They were just hitting ridiculous 3-point shots to make this game even an 8-point game, right? I mean, ridiculous. They had to be 95 feet from the rim, and they were going in. So they were hitting miraculous shots, is what I'm trying to say. So this is definitely on Murray. And look, basketball players, I know you guys are young kids. I get it, but you have to learn how to control your emotions at a time like this because he, to me, is their best player. I know Trey Young is the star, but to me, the Hawks wouldn't have even been 41-41 without DeJounte Murray. And they're giving the Celtics, I don't care if we're up 3-1, they're giving us some good ass basketball. It's not like we're beating this team like they stole something. These games are close for the majority of the part.
Yeah, and I think that's really where that guard tandem came in. Like, this is why they traded for him
Ah,
because, well, it's a really comp. When you look at the guard pairing there, Dejounte helps a lot with some of Trey's inefficiencies, and that's why so much of their offense runs between those 2 guys. I do agree. It is. it feels kind of dirty to say it because, like, I know that Trey is a good player, but to me, as good of a player as Trey is, I don't think he's ever going to win a championship unless there is a team that is like perfectly built around him because of his size limitations. Because, you know, it feels weird to say he's got size limitations because he's like a regular dude height. He's like 6 feet tall or 6'1". So, like, it feels weird to say that, but he's not good defensively. You can be that height and be good defensively. Like, CP3 was a menace for years, like even with his height limitations, and he's roughly the same height as well. But I think that Dejounte is a more well-rounded player, and obviously being under Coach Popovich, he's been coached up very much so, to the point where he kind of felt underrated. And then going into that trade, getting to Atlanta, he's really started to blossom into that role. I do wonder how they move forward from here. I don't know if this. I don't think this changes much, but like you do kind of have to look at him and say, "Hey, man, you need to be a better leader here. Like you can't put yourself in this kind of situation. We're in a do or you knew at the end of that whistle, as much as you were pissed off, it was a do or die game. Like you went over and he could have gone ahead and chewed him out, and he probably would have got fined. He would have got fined. They because he bumped him,
He made the
he
contact.
because he made the contact, he immediately just signed his own, death warrant on that. Like you just screwed yourself on that, man. And he's going to look back at that and feel really stupid. Obviously, going into Boston down 3-1, the odds are not already in your favor, but you just come on, man. You got to be smarter than that. Like that feels like to me that feels like some of the stuff that Marcus Smart would do, where it's like you can't do that, man. You're putting yourself in a spot. Or when he punched the picture frame, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like you're putting yourself
Yeah.
at risk for no reason. You're letting your emotions get the best of you. And I get it's frustrating. Like you're putting your heart and soul out there and you end up losing a game like that where you feel like you were close. It's got to be demoralizing, but you got to be smarter if you're going to be a leader for this team. But it feels like that series is just over now. Like that just completely, I don't know how they're going to play, man. I have no idea what lineup they're going to trot out.
Yeah, the lineup's going to look weird, but they're going to come out scrappy. Again, this is not going to be something easy for the Boston Celtics. I know they're going to be missing a key piece, but they're going to come out scrappy. I can tell you that right now. They're going to come out scrappy. I hope they come out shooting and missing. That's what we want. We want them to come out shooting and missing. That's what the Celtics are there for. That's why you have Al Horford. A little bit of Muscala sighting. I thought that was interesting.
Like a minute.
It was a
Some
minute
him
and
and
12
Grandin for
seconds or
each
something
like a
like that,
minute.
right? A minute and 17 seconds to be
Yeah, I
exact.
don't even know why they did it. I feel like they just needed to get like Al off the floor for a
For a
second to like
couple of
check some
seconds.
things, and they were just
Wasn't
like,
wasn't Rob Williams in going into foul trouble? I mean, he finished the game with 5 fouls.
I'm trying to think of when exactly Muscala came in. I feel like it must have been the third quarter.
So
I don't
Rob
think
might
it
have
was
had
at
like 3
halftime.
or 4 at the time. I don't know. Can't
I
remember.
think he finished with 5.
He
I thought
finished
for a
with
second,
5.
I think he almost fouled out, and like they took him out of the game. And I think I was listening to the call with Scal, and I think it's Eddie House who was on.
Yeah.
So I think they might have said that he fouled out, but the reality was I think they just pulled him
Yeah.
late in
He
that
didn't foul
game.
out the game. No.
But yeah, it was so yeah. They threw Muscala in there, and I like Mike Muscala, but I don't know.
He's not ready.
It's not even a matter of ready. It's just like where does he fit, and do you really play him over Grant at this point?
I
Like, mm,
I kind of thought, I mean, what does he give you over Grant? Size. I would
he gives you a bit more size. You can
a
play
bit
him
more size.
legitimately at the 5.
I think that's
3-point
it.
shooting is about the same.
I think that's what you get. I
Yeah.
thought maybe that's why they put him in there. They tried Grant Williams in the last game. We were unsuccessful. Well, we didn't. He played well, but we didn't win, right?
Yeah.
And so
It was not on him by any
right.
means.
And I thought maybe they went Mike Muscala just to put in there as a 5 to continue to stretch these bigs. You had to get these bigs out of the paint. I mean, they just even if they weren't in the paint, like they have magnet hands and the ball gravitates toward their hands no matter where they are on the floor. And I just, it's just they're a good rebounding team. The Celtics aren't bad. We just can't rebound over these guys. It's unfortunate. I can't wait till this series is over. I tell you. More breaking news, Tim. Former head coach of the Boston Celtics, Ime Udoka, has just became the head coach of the Houston Rockets. Talk about it, baby.
Wow. So that moved quickly, right? Because they were looking at a lot of different candidates. I know for a fact that Ime was in the fold. Ime was going to be in the conversation for a lot of positions. And I thought it was interesting to me because I thought that he would be in the mix for Detroit, right? And like
Yes.
I saw a listing of like the candidates that Detroit was looking at, and Ime wasn't on the list. So I now that kind of in hindsight makes sense because that Pistons report came out a little bit earlier, but yeah, per Woj, Rockets and Udoka moved fairly quickly towards each other after initial meeting. Sources tell ESPN. Udoka and GM Raphael Stone kept talking on the job. Both sides had some strong options in the marketplace, but got a deal done in the last 24 hours to land Udoka with the Rockets. Huh. Wow. So he must have had other options at the table. So I wonder if there was an offer from the Pistons on the table because I feel like that's a team that would make a lot of sense, especially with the way that that organization is trending. You know, they've got a lot of young talent, and this is kind of why you bring in a guy like Ime Udoka. So I am interested to see how it's going to go in Houston for him. They've got a lot of talent, and they're sure to have a high pick this year. That's for sure.
You're right.
We'll
Right.
see where they end up ultimately landing in the lottery, but, you know, they've got a lot of really good young talent there. So, very
Hey,
interesting.
good, good,
Sucks, but
good
I'm glad he's
news.
not in the East.
Yeah, I was ready to say he then moved back out west. Good news for him. And I hope things work out for him in Houston. Houston, you may have a problem. Let's see.
We'll see, man. You know what? I will say this, though. This beats him going to Toronto because him going to
Yes, because
Toronto
Nick
would have
Nurse
been
was fired. Yes.
yeah, and that's another thing. That whole situation, like, they moved pretty quickly on letting him go, so I think that writing was on the wall there for a while, but
But you said that. You said that as soon as the series was over, they'll probably be moving on from him, and they did
it felt
exactly
like
that.
it, right? You
Yeah.
know, it just the vibes were all kind of weird and just it felt like it was trending in that direction. And now I think with Udoka and Houston, I'm interested to see how they go moving forward. I wonder where they fall in the draft. If they somehow manage to land Victor Wembanyama, or even like if they land like top 2 or 3 and they end up getting like Scoot Henderson or something, that's
Hmm.
going to be very, very interesting. They're going to have a lot of youth to work with. And I kind of wonder what kind of sort of pull he's going to have there. I mean, people talked about maybe James Harden leaving Philly or something like that, but you never know. And going back to Houston, that's kind of been a little bit some murmurs here and there. Nothing substantial, but just, you know, him being open to it. But major wrinkle,
Major.
major wrinkle. So we'll see how that unfolds, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does feel like it's just kind of like, all right, just rip the Band-Aid off. Like, I didn't want this series to go on this long, but now that Philly's like just chilling, waiting for the next
Getting
round to
healthy,
start,
right?
I'm like, I mean, look, I don't think any amount of time is going to fix Embiid right now. Like, he's not going to be 100%. I think he's probably going to miss the first 2 games of this series, and then maybe he'll come back for the third and not be 100% still. And I think this is kind of where you look at the situation with Philly is just how much of it's him not taking care of his health, how much of it's just him running himself into the ground. I honestly think that the flopping is really hurting him because he's just throwing his body around. Can't imagine that's good for his knees, but getting
That's
into
a
that
big
Philly
guy
series,
too, you know.
he's a
That's a
big
big
dude. He's a
that's a
big
big
dude.
guy.
Can't
That's
be
a big
throwing that weight
guy.
around,
Seven
man.
footer. Gotta be what, 280 pounds, something up there.
Maybe.
He's big.
Now I want to know. Yeah, I'm not going to bother right now.
Nah,
I
don't worry
don't want to
about
weight
it.
shame. I don't
It's
want to
just a
weight shame
big
him.
dude,
He's just
man.
a big
Like,
guy. It's a big
and
man.
and he
It's a
play
lot of
listen,
muscle.
I like Embiid, right? When we're not playing him. But when we
It's the same with
play him,
Giannis.
he's a freaking pain in the
Yep.
butt. And the same thing with Giannis, because
Mm.
all Giannis does is tuck the ball in like a fullback and try to get to the rim. I'm just tired of it. But I would say that Embiid has a little bit more skill set. He has great footwork. He has a good post game. He's like a center that can like literally can shoot and still
Legitimate jump
attack you in
shot.
the paint. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
jump shot.
agreed. Yeah.
And so that's what really I was just like, ugh. And he always shows up against the Celtics. It doesn't matter. He just shows up against the Celtics.
You
He's
gotta give
ready
him
for the
credit for
lights.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, besides that, is there anything else you wanna cover today? I'm
No,
still
man, this
reeling from
is
the Dejounte news.
that we got the breaking news, man, and I think from there, man, we we're just it's a green light for the Celtics, right? No pun
Mhm.
intended. It's all we should see all green at this moment. I think the Celtics come out in the next game. They just come out with the same game plan. They attack, they attack, they attack. I'm okay, Tim, when they shoot. I'm not okay, Tim, when they try to shoot and they just consistently miss. I know they got to find a way to get back into a rhythm, but how about get some easier shots? Get a mid-range if you can't get to the paint. And I do want to give a shout out to our six-man Malcolm Brogdon, because he played as hard as I've ever seen him play in this game. Like, even after that bunny he missed at the rim, which we do miss bunnies. I don't know why the Celtics miss bunnies, but they miss layups. He continued to play hard, and you saw he had a much better game 4 than he did game 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's where Boston's going to make that difference, is just having all these depth pieces, and it's definitely going to be a factor moving forward past this round. So here's hoping they just put a bow on it, wrap it up on Tuesday. Going to be a little bit different with Dejounte Murray not in the fold, but we shall see. Other than that, this has been the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet.